So we're back again. This is the business third episode, and I've roped Iain Cahill from Gewardz into it. Ian, how are you? How are things?
I'm good, Daniel, and yourself?
I'm not too bad now. I'm not too bad. Busy, but January and February have been a bit crazy for us. I think same for yourselves as well.
Yeah, you know what? I kind of sat down over Christmas. I give myself about 72 hours of downtime, maybe a little bit less. And then I figure out what 26 or the following year looks like. And
Yeah.
I kind of chastised myself and said we were nowhere hitting the numbers that I had set as an agenda. So I've kind of ramped things up in 2026, and it's hurting, but we're making progress.
Yeah, yeah, and it is like we always do the same, but I think targets are there to be either met or changed if need to be changed and reevaluated as you go along, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but there's a tendency we let ourselves off the hooks as well, and so sometimes the danger with being a very small business like ours in terms of numbers of people is if you've no accountability, who are you accountable to? And so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you've got to hold your own marker very high because otherwise it can drift awful easy, and sometimes we're in danger of doing that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, I found that a lot with the businesses that we're dealing with. It is, and it's funny, you can sometimes overcomplicate things, but actually, when you simplify it down, sometimes business owners, as in that are stuck in the day to day, just need a little bit of accountability. You know, someone to just call them to action and say, "Did you get that done? What do you need with this?" And we're finding that a lot with business owners that are coming into us. But what you had a milestone during the week or last week, 1,000
Yeah,
subscribers.
look, we the segue to Gewardz Health. In 2023 we started to build out a platform that was about supporting SME business owners. So we see ourselves as collaborating and partnering with those. When you're dealing in healthcare, you're up against the incumbents, so it's not an easy animal to fight. And these guys turning over 400 or 500 million a year, they've got big, very deep pockets. But it was very, very rewarding to find that we had hit our 1,000 subscriber at the start of February, and so all the hard work, it's inch by inch and claw by claw, but we're making progress.
Yeah, and we talked just before we started recording, and you're saying, and it's the last two episodes that's come up with John from Robotic Lawnmowers and Tomas from Step One is like Instagram versus reality. Instagram have painted this picture of this instant success that's out there, and it's instant success because that's when you see it, but they don't see the 4 or 5 years that went before it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's true, and I think Katrina O'Sullivan put a very good LinkedIn post up there yesterday saying much the same thing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what people think. It's about how you succeed, and we get caught up in the need for immediacy, and I think that's the big challenge. I mean, I work with a couple of business owners in a sort of a mentoring capacity because it holds me accountable, and by default holds them accountable, and you know one of the difficulties is you start a dream and you say in 3 years I'll be out because that's what all of the VC houses tell you to
Yeah,
do. Now
yeah,
raise
yeah.
big, 3 years we'll have a big exit. But when you're 3, 5, 10, 15 years into the trenches, you go, Jesus, what happened to that 3 year exit dream that sits there? So it is important that we keep ourselves motivated, and sometimes we just lose the motivation, and then we forget, then we get tired. And then, as you say, if we spend forever in the weeds and we don't step back and go and say, actually, the big picture, we've got to keep an eye on that. And for me, one of the difficulties I have is that we've got to keep aligned to our why, our purpose, our reason why we do stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and when we bring in third parties and as we grow, we dilute the why and then we forget what the hell the motivation was all about. And so it's getting that mix right. And I had it recently. We did a big reach out to all our clients and we got a really, really, really big response back. Like we did 97% success rate. One fellow wasn't happy. I got to deal with that, but everybody else was. So I can deal with that large number piece. But my fear was reaching out as you get the message that you don't want to hear. So
Yeah, yeah.
you've got to take that to the chin. But actually, when you get the message that you hoped you were delivering, that's really, really positive. So sometimes just go back and ask your clients why they work with you and give
Yeah.
yourself that self motivation to go, that's why we build a business.
Yeah, and I would have when I reached out to you, I actually reached out to you not about doing this interview, but actually I think it was last week I was sitting here and I said I need to give Ian this feedback because my own health issues over the last couple of weeks. I suffer from a thing called Meniere's, and I was in and out in A&E and trying to get doctor's appointments, trying to get this, that, and the other, waiting a week for a GP visit. And actually, my wife said to me, "Why don't you just go on to Gewardz and book a GP visit?" And I was like, "Why didn't I think of this?" Went on, had a GP visit that evening at 6 o'clock, and while because I was in A&E and I'm waiting for MRI results, the Gewardz doctor couldn't prescribe me anything, but actually I spoke to him for 10 minutes and he put my mind at ease, put my mind at rest, and even that in itself was unbelievable. So
Yeah, look, as we live in a very interesting time. They talk about Dr. Google, and we can go research things an inch of our lives, and we can self-diagnose, and unfortunately, the human nature is we see in the negative 5 times more than we see in the positive, and so that's a very dangerous place to go to. And as we progress and grow Gewardz Health, our desire is that people always speak to a human, because at the end of the day, that's where the biggest um, calming effect is going to come from. And we've got a 42% utilization of members on our platform during the course of a year. We use our platform, and in when we talk about B2B side, where it's employee well-being, that's unheard of in an industry where 1 to 2% for EAP or employee assistance programs is the norm. So we book trends because we want to. We book trends because we want to know those stories are coming back to us. That thank you very much, and we're the healthcare partner to the Small Firms Association for the Members Advantage program, and they've had their very successful SFA awards, and they had their Business Connect event down in Nice a couple of weeks ago. And it was really pleasant to walk around the exhibit and see the number of SFA award finalists who are clients of ours, and know that number is growing. And to pick up testimonials, really, that's what we do this for.
Yeah. And you had said something to me one of the times just before Christmas, because I know, and it's still there. It's something that I know we want to kind of hone in on, the clients that I'm dealing with, that we can offer to Gewardz, and it is something that we're going to look at in 2026 to try and push on. But you had said something to me the last time we met around the value add in regards to monetary terms, and I had never thought about that. I was just thinking about it as, okay, this is a really good service and a really good perk to be able to give to staff. And I had a conversation with a lady yesterday. She had a sinus infection or something, and she had to take a day off work to go to the doctor. Then she had to take an evening off work, leave early to go and get her prescription before the chemist shut. And I said, we have a thing called Gewardz that we've subscribed to. And I said, brilliant. And I said, you can get a doctor's appointment online. And you could have got that prescription sent to you, and you could have went and got lunch. And she was like, right. And it actually clicked with me then. I said, right, I can see the monetary value in it now. Whereas before I was just looking at it from the value that it's adding in regards to the brilliant service that it is. But actually that conversation just kind of opened my eyes to go, there's the monetary value right there. That lady had to take nearly a day and a half off work where she didn't need to.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I back did a study back about 2023, I think, where they said about the average the time lost by employees waiting for GP appointments and getting GP appointments about 4.2 days a year. So there's always a point there. It's never a
of course.
So if you think about that, if I'm employing somebody and their chart costs me 150 euros a day in value in terms of wages and various things, we can get our clients' employees back in the office a day earlier, a number of things happen. One is obviously there's a monetary value from the company point of view. Two is there's a stress relieving from the employee point of view, because they want to get back to work and they want to contribute to their team and to their companies. But much more importantly, like, we extend our service to the household family members. It's not just about the employee. And so, if you look at the insurance world, it's a single contract 1-to-1. Sometimes they extend it out, sometimes they charge, sometimes they limit the utilization of it. We make it really, really simple. And the reason why it's important that it extends into the household is I don't care about me being sick that often. I'm middle class, sorry, not middle class, I'm middle aged. I'm trying to avoid that particular phrase. But, I can live with being sick because I'm self-employed, I got to keep working. But if my children get sick, then that's when the crisis kicks in. And, if you employ parents in an organization and a child gets sick, it's pandemonium. Who's
Yeah.
going to take time off work? What's going to happen to kids out? How do we do this? And we talk about the age of diversity and inclusive and inequality. It's usually the mammies who are forcing to reschedule and redo. So 64% of the time, the pandemonium hits the mammies in the household. And so the fact that we can have 7 days a week access, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., like none of my children ever get sick at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It just doesn't work that way somehow. So 7 o'clock on Friday is pretty good, or 8 o'clock on Saturday morning is usually pretty impressive. But it does mean that we don't disrupt. We help the household reduce the chaos, and that it then feeds into the business environment where people are far less stressed about the circumstance. And we've lots of great testimonials about it. And in our own case, about 7 or 8 weeks ago, I have a 15-year-old daughter of mine, and she had an infected thumb, just stuff that kids do. And my wife, who doesn't get hysterical on a Saturday morning, is going, if I don't get an antibiotic into her, she'll be in A&E by Monday, because she can see how this thing was working out.
Yeah.
So this is a 8:15. By 9:15, we're speaking to a GP on Gewardz Health, and by 10:15, my daughter has antibiotics, and Monday morning she's in school. Now, that's the story. The fact that the employers can make that available to employees, I mean, that reward, that ability to reward and retain and recruit, has been at the mantra of where we sit as a business. And so that for us is why we do, the idea about going, Daniel, you've got kids the same way I do. And the other practical reality is, and this is, a bugbear I have, is to go and get a prescription is going to cost me €80 to see my GP.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a brilliant GP. And if I want anything that involves physical look or touch or feel, absolutely, he's the first port of call, because we're a digital online service. But not for an 80 quid prescription for stuff we kind of know, because we're around long enough, and we have 4 children, so we've seen the majority of what's going to take place. So, it's a very expensive cost just to get a prescription. As the employer, when you give that to me as an employee, I don't have to pay that €80 for that Saturday morning visit for my own child. And so that's another way, that's a very soft way to give back to both parties.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, it was all the times we've discussed. Actually, when you start discussing it out more, and you look at, it's funny when you say the infected thumb. We had something similar. He had an infected finger, the top of his finger, like that as well. You know that if it goes day 1, day 2, day 3, well, then you're in A&E, and just being able to get that service. And because the other night when I messaged you, I said it's important to give this feedback, because, as you said, there's a reason you do this. There's a reason for the Gewardz thing. So it's nice actually to get that feedback as well. Is that I was training the kids at 8:30, and I said, lads, I have to step out for 5 minutes because of a doctor's call. And one of the other coaches was like, what do you mean you have a doctor's call? I said, oh, I'll tell you again, it's this great service we use, blah, blah, blah. But just on the whole Gewardz thing, and again, I know the answer to this, but it has obviously moved beyond the healthcare now and into different realms, different sectors as well of what would you say?
Yeah. So look, let me step back to go forward, so you get a sense of where we come from. So when we founded Gewardz as a platform, so the Gewardz is a derivative of rewarding, which is where it comes from. Our idea was that we would create a platform that supported SME business owners in the best way we could. So, you see the logo as sitting there, think like Apple. So for the last 30 years, I mean, I worked for GE Capital, I worked for large organizations, I've been head of business development. And the motto I have is think like Apple, not like somebody who sells apples. And the reason being is that, when we're at the SME level, we get exposed to a different level of understanding and thinking. And we don't realize that the same rules that apply to Apple apply to a small business. But we don't have the time, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the consultants, we don't have the ability to just understand what the world looks like. So using that premise, we started out as a reward platform. It was a B2B reward platform. If it's good enough to receive reward points at a Tesco's, why isn't every business using rewarding as part of a solution? And that's where we started. But it's a tough sell to ask somebody to give something away when they're a small business and margins are a bit tighter. And then in 2023, we got asked by clients going, it's all about our employees. We can't get them. We can't keep them. We can't afford to keep throwing money at them because the tax system is very expensive. And I said, well, you got to give them more. The days of a pay slip and a smile are over. My competing for an employee for a salary base is the same with somebody else's. And if they can offer, 500 quid more, it might be enough just to sway that person away from you.
Yeah.
However, I did say to the client, I said, give more, and healthcare is going to be where it matters, because healthcare is a crisis that's growing. It's not getting any easier, and it doesn't matter. And it's no disrespect to any government, including our own. They're doing their best. They're throwing money at it as best they can, but our population's exploding.
Yeah.
If you take the international communities coming into Ireland in the last 18, we've gone up by about 22%. So with that in mind, they said, look, we can't afford to offer health insurance for our employees. And I'm going, I recognize that. And we're not competing with health insurance in my mind. We're providing another solution to people for whom healthcare is beyond their reach, whether that's in a personal capacity or a business capacity. And then I said, look, large organizations have access to a structure around healthcare that SME businesses don't get because they're too small to serve. That expression that comes around the place. And he goes, what does that mean? I said, I'll do one better. I'll build it. So I looked at the marketplace. I looked at where employee well-being is and was. And I said, yes, we'll do the counselling piece and the employee assistance piece that's out there. But actually, that isn't what people use. They use GP services. So we went to the largest telehealth provider in Europe, or digital health provider is probably a better expression in Europe. Same people who serve the likes of VHI in Ireland and Bupa in the UK. And I said, look, allow us, support us to see if we can help SME businesses get access to the platform. And they have backed us and said, yeah, go for it. So Brilliant. It's been that journey, right? So we've created a corporate solution for the SME world that the SME world wouldn't ordinarily get access to. But being a tinkering entrepreneur, we never stop fiddling with things. It's a disaster. It really is. Another shiny toy like the magpie stuff. But one of the premises about what we're trying to achieve is, what are the benefits that we can add to that platform that actually make a difference? So in the last 30 months that we have been live with subscribers, I think we have seen probably less than 1% of people use our counselling service. Less than 1%. So if you've got a HR person who's pushing employee assistance programs, the counselling sessions, ask them for the return on investment on that, because we know firsthand. In fact, our providers go, have you actually got that available, Iain? Because nobody's ringing it. I go, well, we push it, but that's not what people want. So the GP obviously is a crucial piece of that. The reason why we've added on things like our discount travel platform is that not everybody's sick. So if I'm in an organization and I'm offering out a benefit to my employees and they go, I'm not sick, that has no value. Go, well, let's have a bit of a flutter. We have a discount hotel platform we're targeting to be 10 to 12% cheaper than the other online travel portals that we're aware of. And so, for example, I was pricing a trip to New York in March, up against one of the platforms against ours, and I think we were $240 cheaper than the same trip.
Wow.
For the same duration, same hotel, same everything. So that's a really nice ad. And the reason why I did travel is it's an itch I have to scratch. We actually launched the online travel platform the 17th of March 2020 when COVID kicked off in the first place.
Right, okay.
So that's a side of life we haven't had a conversation on. So we launched two-tier and at the start of a pandemic. And a piece of advice to anybody, don't launch a travel program at the start of a pandemic. It doesn't quite work. But we kept the infrastructure. I've always liked the travel piece. And we've made that part of our growing list of benefits so that people are getting more for the same price. That's how the world should work. We did a deal with Gewardz Health. And for those of you who don't know who Gewardz Health were in the time of COVID, they would have been the people that you were sent to get your COVID testing done. Very, very progressive organisation based in the north of Ireland. But we've put it there because an awful lot of our subscribers now via companies are international workers. They have no healthcare infrastructure.
The
GP practices are closed. They can't get in. they can go online and pay for single transactions, 50, 70, 100 quid to get a GP visit, but there's no continuity with that. So as you know, because you've used the service, we're effectively a de facto GP practice for these people.
Yeah.
So if you look at my history of utilization of Gewardz Health, it was kind of ironic that I needed a prescription before Christmas because I could feel a cold coming on. And the GP on the line said, would you believe a year to the day, Iain, you had the same phone call with us looking for the same type of prescription? And I said, knowing you've got that continuity is huge because
Massive, yeah.
it allows you to be able to give you that additional comfort.
Well, it is because
So,
it is
yeah.
when I go back to my story. Sorry, Ian, when I go back to my story, is that I had a GP visit booked, and I got the Gewardz call in the in between that, and then when I went to my GP visit, the results from my A&E visit weren't with my doctor from 3 weeks previous, but the call I had with Gewardz the night before was with my doctor. You know, so when you talk about continuity, like you can't beat that kind of.
Yeah, you're dead right. So you have the ability to triage with our service. So at the end of every call, they'll say, would you like to share this detail with your own GP if you have one? Now, what we're finding is lots and lots of people don't have GPs.
Yeah.
Or worse than that, they move county and, the amount of stories you hear of, I drive home to the GP when I was 5 when I lived with my parents 200 miles away because I can't get a local GP. All of that stuff that well attended but just not available. So with the Randox Health piece, it allows you to be able to go and get blood tests done. You go book an appointment. You're going to get your results 2 to 4 days later, depending on how complex you want it to be. And we've negotiated a 15% discount for all the members. And again, a give back that sits there. They like our model because, the notion of single transaction, go and see a GP and pay 70 quid. Well, go subscribe to us. And then you've got continuity of care because if you start doing blood tests, you get a bit obsessive about seeing them like a year later. So there's a continuity around all of that stuff that plays into where we need to be. And then we are looking at, we've just agreed a deal with MindGuard, which is a mental awareness app that's been funded by Trinity. So they have asked us, or we've agreed that we would bring their offering onto our platform as something a little bit different. So it's sort of a pre-crisis analysis, helping people deal with the emotion where they're at and seeing if that takes them without having to see a counselling service. So we're in the middle of building that stuff out right now. And we're doing that because we're playing in an awful lot of silos, Daniel. But over the last 18 months, my entire focus of the business has been growth through collaboration. Hence, you and I have talked about how Run My Business and ourselves can collaborate together. So, with the SFA, I mean, the best organization to represent the SME community. So we're very proud to be a partner of theirs to help them achieve, the best we can for the SME community. We have a deal done with Angela at Canavan Burn, and they provide the online training to probably about 80% of the early learning facilities. And the reason being, an awful lot of that cohort of employees tend to be international, ironically Spanish. And again, this issue about how do they get a GP when they arrive on the Irish shores. But really, really interestingly, we've got into the international student space. So we've done a deal where we're now the mandated partner for one of the colleges. The only way that they'll accept a medical cert from the students is if they have gone through our service. And we've done a deal about how that's possible. And they've done that because there's too much spurious medical certs online. There's lots and lots of stuff going out there, and the credibility piece, because they know we can't issue a medical cert unless there's been a GP interaction first. So there's a credibility piece that absolutely matters around that stuff. And that's extending. We've done a deal with an Irish company to be the care provider for US students when they come into Ireland and the UK, and they arrive in the shores for anywhere between sort of 3 weeks and 6 months, depending on where it is. So we're doing lots of really, really interesting growing footprint of what we're doing because we solve this growing crisis about I just need to speak to a GP as quick as I can. That's kind of the ultimate to it. Sorry, I've rambled a bit, but
no, you have
get a
not.
sense of where I sit behind it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was really keen to get you on just to share this with my network, because I know obviously we've been really busy in January, and then you get sick then, and there's 3-4 weeks missing out of your calendar, and then you're trying to play catch up. But no, look, I can see for myself as a business owner, but also as an employee, how beneficial the service is. And I think it's always easy to talk to people. It's always easy to talk to people about something that you believe in yourself. And I've definitely found that. And I suppose if people are interested in any of my network that see this, how did they get in contact with Gwords, or how did they go about maybe signing up to a Gwords, or how does that process work, or how does that
Yeah,
process
so
look?
look, you can see the spelling there, Gewardz health.com. So the logo kind of helps to make the spelling of that. Just go on there. One or two ways. If you're a company and you'd like to know more, just fill in the know more sheet. It'll come to me, and then I'm more than happy. In 20 minutes of a demonstration, you'll know whether it's of value for you and your business and your teams. As an individual, there is the option just to subscribe. So just go on and click here to join, and you can join, and you will be, you'll be live speaking with GP in 5 minutes, or you'll certainly be
Yeah.
able to book a GP within 5 minutes. And it's the big wow for us. I was at an investor presentation, and I think we did a 10-minute pitch, and the computer didn't work, or the presentation didn't work, and I said, look, so I stood up and go, I bet you I can have a GP appointment booked in 15 seconds. And guys looked at me and said, I don't believe it. We took a side bet on it. And in 12 seconds, I had a GP appointment booked. I won the side bet. And actually, the investors were quite interested in what we did. So, it's so simple. No form filling, no nothing. This is about making life easy.
Yeah, no, like for me, I suppose it's funny because we would have met maybe nearly 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and then obviously we started to employ people, and I do think it's something that we're going to look at in 2026, and we touched on it previous, is a benefits program for Run My Business clients, and
Yeah.
we're keen to put Gwords as part of that, and obviously the app that we build, we're going to start building Gwords into that, whether the company themselves sign up to Gwords, but the people that are using the app might be struggling for a GP, so we're hoping that we might be able to capture, and that will benefit some of those employees as well. But when I fast forward and I seen the platform firsthand, that was the big thing for me. I think it was originally you had met someone else, and then when I seen the platform and I seen how quick it was and how easy it is, there was no selling on it for me. It was just, yeah, it made perfect sense. But Ian, thanks a million for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Really interesting to see. I'd encourage anyone even just to drop a line and ask the question, because it definitely is a benefit that we've seen massive benefit in, and something that we are definitely going to actively offer to our clients. So if you are in the space of employing people and retaining people, or you're struggling to get a GP, reach out to Gwords and Ian, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. So.
Super. Very much appreciated. And look, it's good you and I talk. I mean, the other day, an interview about Run My Business, because you're doing some very smart stuff there as well. But I'll take the accolades today.
Yeah, yeah, thanks a million. Yeah, yeah, Ian, I'll touch base with you over the next couple of weeks. We'll get to sit down, and really appreciate you jumping on. So thanks a million.
Super. Take care. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers, cheers, Ian.